welcome to another edition of the SEANC View podcast. I'm Jonathan Owens, your communications director here at SEANC, joined today by the usual group, Ardis Watkins, SEANC Executive Director. Hello, Ardis.
Hey, John.
Got you right before you drink a sip of water.
Hey, John.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. Hydrating.
Suzanne Beasley, our Government Relations Director. Hello, Suzanne. And Sam Cline, our podcast producer in this room.
I'm back. Yay.
Back from a long trip west. We may hear a little bit about that later, but I hear you had a good time.
It was a great time.
So a big week this week for you, Suzanne. The legislature came back in earnest to do actual work from what I understand, right? They came back. The session started January 8th, I think.
Right. And yesterday was like the first day of business. It actually ended up being skeletal sessions, but the Hurricane Helene relief committees met yesterday. Other than that, I think they passed floor rules for both chambers, and the House has done something different. Speaker Hall has set a calendar that is marked with specific days that they'll hold committee, specific days that they'll hold votes. I think the tweet said, "You're welcome, lobbyists."
That is helpful.
Well, it is helpful, but, we all know that can change on a
whim.
If they need to vote on something, it's not like that.
Yeah, I saw
change.
His tweet about that was pretty popular, especially even with the journalists who...
Well, it's awesome if you have some idea of how the days are going to go. I mean, the majority of my career here with SEANC, we just had to sit and wait. We still do.
Hurry up and wait.
Yeah, what's on the calendar tomorrow? I don't know. It's not out yet.
Yep.
So maybe a good start for Speaker Destin Hall there.
I'll go with
appreciate that.
I'll go with that.
What else happened, Eddie? I saw you mentioned a few bills that had been proposed, but...
Produced, yeah.
Not a...
Yeah, I went through the bills last night. I think I did send to our illustrious management team the ones I had picked out that were interesting.
So you did give us a list. The big SEANC-related or state employee ones weren't on that list yet, but any...
some that may be interesting for us, but none of the big spending that we would be asking for, like pay raises and, something for retirees. Of course, all of that is handled in the budget, so we still got a ways to go.
Yeah. And it's funny because every year the way that's approached feels like, what gifts do we give to public employees? It is not a gift to have your pay move up with inflation. It is not a gift to get the benefits that go with your job. And it's definitely not a gift when you've been doing the job of more than one person. And that is the situation across state government. So it's kind of interesting to me. It's a cost of business. And, SEANC's a business. We understand it's not fun, but it's a cost of business. If you want to have a business that thrives and can provide
then you
good
have
service.
To have people. Yeah.
Yeah. So looking forward to the session, do you think that people will be open to that concept? That this is not whether or not you're going to be generous and give a gift to state employees. This is how are you going to make sure you can maintain your workforce?
Well, that's clearly got to be our conversation. And we already started those conversations. Obviously, they came out for the special sessions to deal with relief funds and funding for Hurricane Helene, and appropriately so. We needed to address that immediately. But then we reached the point where we had to start going back to our legislators and reminding them that all of these issues that we had, like the vacancy crisis, low wages, and their benefits being
slowly eroded
over time.
It catches up. There are effects on the public.
There are effects on the public. And if you don't have quality public services, businesses are not going to want to come here. You got to have the infrastructure to attract businesses and people in general. So we started having those conversations again. We've got to go back to those issues and address them. They didn't just disappear into thin air.
Yeah, well, I did an interview last week with Pete Callender out of Charlotte, and he's got a very popular conservative radio show and podcast and all kinds of things. But it was an interesting experience because the people who called in or emailed him after the segment where we talked about the state health plan and benefits generally for state employees, there's a perception out there that public employees make a whole lot of money. And it was interesting because one guy's email referenced like a city manager or an assistant city manager somewhere, which, that would be an incredibly good job. Like not remotely. That would be multiplied multiple times of your basic state employee salary. So I thought that was really kind of instructional for us to realize how much of the public thinks state employees are making this great money. Yeah.
Well, we've always had the issue of the disconnect, the perception of, government employees, period.
Right.
But they're working people just like everybody else. And they're not working people who are making a couple of $100,000 a year.
No, and they're making less less, definitely less.
Yes.
And that was the other thing. People were very convinced without anything they were
Yeah.
going to that was factual, but very convinced. And it does matter how people feel because we do have to address that. But I think going into the legislative session, that's something y'all will have to realize.
Yeah.
A lot of the freshmen, for instance, who may not have been around state government,
And they just won't
if
know.
I had coming into the legislature as a freshman, had only been involved with the private sector, no public employee relatives, based on just the things you hear people say, you would be pretty convinced, yeah, they get paid just as much as the private sector. They just get better benefits.
We've had conversations this week already with legislators who have been here for a while who don't understand.
Right.
So we've talked to several this week where we've made appointments. We got to go sit down and educate them. And,
Yeah. Because it's not, we're not mad at anybody for
No,
having that
it's-
perception because it really is more widespread.
It is.
And it's good to get a reminder of that sometimes. So if you're listening to this and you're not a public employee, they are not making bank.
At all.
They are not.
Yeah, I think I was listening to the aftermath of your interview, the next segment after you were on. I think it was the person right after you was saying something about if you make $250,000 a year, $20 more a month than your premium, because it was about
Right.
Yeah.
healthcare premiums.
I'm struggling to think in state government
who
literally
is
who that would be. I'm not saying you might not have a medical professor who's been there forever that may get to that level, or certainly like the investment
It's not a correctional officer.
chief investment officer maybe over at the treasurer's office, because those jobs,
Yeah.
that would obviously still be a fraction of what that person would make out in the private sector. But that's not like a price point for state employees. But I get it. People think that. And look, Pete was very fair in the discussion about transparency with regard to the health plan. The piece that he wasn't buying was that state employees can't afford to spend
Right.
more on their premiums. And the piece that kind of got lost, because what happens is the public likes to talk about each other. Instead of getting mad at corporations for not being open with what they're charging in terms of hundreds of millions of dollars to the state, they'd rather be mad at a neighbor and say, that public employee neighbor is already getting paid enough. They can pay a little more. Forgetting that the state health plan, that's 10% of the market. So what happens to state employees healthcare wise is going to happen to you if you're in the private sector. Because if 10% of the market starts to pay more, you're going to be paying more too.
Yeah, and I know I guess we can just launch right into the healthcare situation, but I struggle to understand why raising premiums is going to really help that huge deficit they're facing when you could save a lot more money if you actually cut the costs, right? I mean,
Transparency being the key factor there.
So, went into it backwards, and the treasurer's office is indicating they're wanting to look at premium increases on state employees in order to make up a $500 million shortfall in the state health plan. And that maybe those premium increases would be staggered depending on your income. The question I was asked on Pete Calliner's show is, what's the problem with staggering them? If somebody makes $250,000, why can't they pay more? What that question itself is ignoring is that there's not a need to get to that question. That's assuming the only way that we can ever make things right and transparent in government is just to keep going to the working people and put more costs on them. But keep the secrecy of these contracts that are negotiated by an insurance company. And for whatever reason, well, we know the reason, it's considered an exception to the Public Records Act. And these contracts and the charging in some cases, which we know is 3 and 4 times what it takes to make a profit, charging the government that much is just swept under the rug and kept secret. They are protected by the law, protected to rip you off if they want to.
And you're a rank and file taxpayer.
And so the solution is always, well, let's just go to have each employee give some more.
I think that's the whole thing, that it is such a complicated issue that you wind up.
It's not complicated. Seriously.
It's hard. Like you said, let's just go to the employees. Like that's the easiest route.
Well, of course it is. That's the people who don't have the power.
Yeah.
And that's the low-hanging fruit. The employees can't punch back with millions of dollars against you in a political race, or it's much easier to pick on working people.
I thought it was kind of funny that 2 days ago we did an interview with a publication that's going to come out in the next few days with their story on this topic. And when I was talking to the reporter, it was like, oh, we'll just have a few questions, just a few. We'll spend a few minutes talking about it. So then we get into the interview, you and I, and Suzanne was there as well. And we just kept unraveling things. And by the end, we talked about an hour. It's just, I think once you start digging,
it was
to be a good reporter.
It's a unique position that the treasurer is in. Treasurer Briner literally can take a state, North Carolina in this case, that he's responsible for, which is number one in the country in the cost of healthcare and third from last in quality of healthcare. This is according to Forbes magazine survey, and we keep coming in these positions, most expensive and all but the crappiest in outcome. He's in a unique position to do something about it. With 10% of the market, again, he can move the market by the decisions he makes. So his choice right now, so far, is not to demand transparency and to demand that the protecting the secrecy of corporations is less important than protecting the rights of North Carolinians to affordable health care. Where he's going to go in the future with that, I don't know. I hope at some point he'll publicly choose to say, I will not stand by and let this happen to everyone in North Carolina.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of teachers are commenting on our Facebook posts about the health plan because they're maybe looking for information.
Yeah, well, I mean, traditionally, that's what we hold down. Teachers, I don't think they've had opportunity or resources to this kind of information that SEANC covers. I mean, this is something we've always done. We stay on top of the state health plan, which is for teachers and state employees. So I'm glad that some are finding their way to us for this important information. But
at the end of the day, the bottom line is that it's not likely you're going to secure a massive raise for public employees, right?
Right. I don't
because of
that.
all of the things that challenges the state faces. Post-Helene,
right,
with rules and regulations coming down from the presidential administration and Congress. Therefore, if money's very limited and inflation's still inflation, the cost of living, in fact, for a lot of things is going up. Then if these healthcare costs increase, this is a pay cut.
That's right.
For public employees. So I'm sure they are worried about it. They should be.
Another thing that happened this week, I guess today, the Retirement System Board of Trustees met and
they did.
Past President Martha Fowler, Retiree Council Chairman Jamie Robinson, and Retiree Council Vice Chair, past Chair Benny Brigman, Retiree Council guru Benny Brigman were on hand there to make sure our retirees were represented. What happened at that meeting? And
there was a lot of introductory information, just shared with the board. And they did their, the usual vote that you do this time of year. The board did not recommend any changes in benefits to the plan because the plan didn't make enough gains to actually pay a COLA or even a one-time non-recurring bonus or supplement. So that leaves us obviously going to the legislature for something for our retirees, put something in their pocketbook too.
So I'm sorry, it seems like I spend all my time on social media from what it sounds like, but I saw that
you are communications director.
So Treasurer Briner is getting more active on Facebook, by the way. But I saw a post that Mo Green is now on the board of trustees. Right. Is that common?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Superintendent.
And Stacy Meyer as well, who is she the HR director?
Yeah, Barbara Gibson was on there before.
Okay.
Yeah, they had the resolutions for Barbara and Catherine Truitt today as well.
Okay.
A little tidbit, though, in the past, your first check when you retire, your first payment of your benefit payment has always had to be a paper check. And then things are on. You're on a roll. But now that can be electronic.
Nice.
So
that's a big difference.
That'll make people happy. That's pretty much it.
So I think that wraps up what we have for this week. Just kind of things are starting to get going, it sounds like. But we did want to include an interview that we did at our retreat in Wilmington a few weeks ago with the folks who were heavily involved in our Helene relief efforts in the West. Our Western region rep, Cliff Johnson, and Jamie Robinson, our retiree council chairman.
Jamie's everywhere.
Also District 9 chairman. So they kind of spearheaded a lot of the efforts that we did up there, and they were gracious enough to give us 10 or 15 minutes at our meeting. And so that we just want to provide kind of an update and a wrap up of what we did out West and what the needs are right now. So we're going to play that here in a second, but I understand that there are some fires going on at the...
Right, and we're recording this Thursday, the 30th of January, so I guess those fires started yesterday.
They just can't catch a break out there, it seems like.
can't.
Huh?
No, so it's very timely to have this update from Cliff and Jamie about work going on out there, relief work. But here's the latest that we see today. Firefighters continuing to make progress in McDowell County. One of the areas hit really hard by Hurricane Helene a few months ago. And there's 3 different areas of fire raging with different percentages of containment at this point. But the bottom line is nobody out there can stand anything else.
Yeah. I mean, we've had the fires in California. We've had fires now here. Is it because of any kind of drought? Or is it just seasonal?
I think my understanding was the wind was
wind.
really
It's
whipping.
dry and windy.
Okay.
And I don't know. I mean, I still don't know exactly. I don't know that they know exactly what started it, but
But things happen.
we're
And we're not fire experts.
we're
Well,
thinking about
And
everybody out
Our
there.
entire state is under, I don't know if you call it a warning, but, like high wildfire alert kind of thing.
Oh.
There was even a fire outside of Bunn, a
Okay.
wildfire last night. And I was talking to my son who lives in Spring Hope. He was like, yeah, they were telling everybody around Bunn to be prepared to evacuate. Apparently they got it under control pretty quickly, but yeah.
It's interesting considering that they are still doing prescribed fires too.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
things are damp most places. We've had precipitation. I don't. That's weird.
Maybe we need
But
to
you
interview
know,
a fire.
We do.
Yeah.
Hey, Suzanne's all about it.
Let's give a shout out to the folks who work in fire. We
Absolutely.
have the Forestry Service up there, and
They're amazing.
so I guess they're probably tackling these fires, correct? And some of them actually went out to California as well.
Yeah.
So a big ups to those state employees. And
Way big.
so let's listen to our interview with Cliff and Jamie, and we'll join you afterwards for a little wrap up. Hello, everyone. This is Jonathan Owens, Communications Director here at SEANC, and we're here today with some fine folks from Western North Carolina. We have our Western Region Representative, Cliff Johnson, and our Retiree Council Chairman, Jamie Robinson, here. We're going to talk a lot about the Hurricane Helene relief efforts. We also have Lynn Cody, our Member Relations Director, and Suzanne Beasley is joining us just for moral support, but she's going to chime in as well. I just wanted to get you guys in here. I know you guys have done so much work on the relief efforts, and just want to let our members know what you guys have done because it's pretty remarkable. So first off, you guys are both obviously residents up there in the Western region. Let's start at the beginning. What happened? What was the date? September
the 27th is when it moved into Helene moved into Western North Carolina.
Okay, so let's start there, although I know it kind of started a few days earlier than that, correct?
Actually, on September the 25th, a cold front came into Western North Carolina, and the parts of Western North Carolina that were heavily impacted were already flooding before Helene actually made its way through Western North Carolina. So all the rivers that where the drastic impacts were already at flood stage before Helene hit.
And I think that's a point that's really been lost, is that it wasn't just the hurricane. It was a lot before then, right? Jamie, what were your memories of that day and when it started?
Well, my memories of it that day, in my county, I live not as far up in the mountains, and we just had a lot of the tree damage, and we had some house damage, is not compared to what they had further up in the mountains.
And you live in Taylorsville, is that
Yes,
correct?
sir, I do.
Okay.
Mhm.
And you live in Asheville, right?
No, I live in Waynesville,
Waynesville. Okay, so you're way up in the...
which is the other side of Haywood County, far
Okay.
side of Haywood. I'm nearly in Jackson County.
So it seems like a lot of the significant damage was right between you guys, right?
Correct.
So was it bad at where you live?
It wasn't bad on my side of Haywood, but when you went into eastern Haywood, where the Pigeon River goes through, there it was drastic. The town of Canton and the town of Clyde both were severely impacted and had a lot of loss of property, and we did have a loss of life in Haywood County.
Okay. And for SEANC's purposes, do you have a lot of state employees in that area? And what are the major employers?
We do, because Buncombe County is the largest group of state employees in the mountains.
Okay.
In the extreme mountains, Buncombe County probably has the largest concentration there for our district. There's 6 counties in District 2. All 6 of those counties were severely impacted by Helene.
Okay. And also, Morganton is right there, and it's got a lot of state agencies as well.
Old Fort at the foot of Old Fort Mountain. Old Fort was severely impacted. Bat Cave.
Yeah.
Jamie and I actually did some recon.
Okay.
We actually rode the roads in these areas after it was safe enough. We couldn't get into a lot of areas. We tried to get into downtown Marshall in Madison County. We couldn't get there. We couldn't get into parts of Old Fort because the roads were still closed and inaccessible. So Jamie and I rode a lot of the roads to try and I guess you'd say, recon where the most need was. When we stopped and asked folks in the different agencies where the need was, a lot of them couldn't even respond yet because everything was still so fluid and still happening. They didn't really know.
Yeah.
So
what were some of the largest impacted state agencies or centers, prisons in
I
that
know
area?
that in Buncombe County, it was Black Mountain Center, Western Women's, Craggy Correctional, ADAC and Black Mountain. Then we go up to Avery Mitchell County, where Avery Mitchell Correctional Institution and Mountain View Correctional Institution are, and their lift station and some of their other infrastructure was severely damaged, and they're still not reopened.
Okay.
They are still closed. The inmates are spread out at different locations. Craggy was reopened as medium custody, increased their population, so they've had to, there's inmates spread all the way to the East Coast down here because of Helene.
So I know that when something like this happens, initially, you're in a kind of a rescue effort, kind of in a stage of kind of almost shock. But at what point did you guys start thinking about your relief efforts that SEANC could be a part of?
Well, and let's go back on the question that you had that Clifford was answering. It was a recon, and we was looking for locations but we checked at all the agencies and the ones that we could find somebody at, and we were asking them, what do you need? And a lot of times, and one of the worst remarks that we got was, we really haven't even got in touch with everybody. It took a period of weeks to 2 weeks before we realized, they couldn't even get in touch with their own personnel. But, John, I'd like to back up also on how this got started. It got started by a phone call. Ardis, our executive director, Kurt Montgomery, our president, and Lynn Cody, our membership director.
That's what I call her too. So that's your new title, Lynn.
All of this started out as a conference call, and SEANC Cares came up into it. And that's the part I take so much pride and honor in what we tried to do, was trying to be able to do what we could for the state employees and our membership up there and anything else that we could do also.
And that was from what I've gathered, I think that was like the night after or right when it happened, right?
It was just a few days afterwards. It was a Saturday morning.
September the 28th.
Yeah.
We started a text tree
between
the SEANC. We're using SEANC Cares, and like he said, Lynn, SEANC Cares jumped in head first, basically. So they played a big role in getting this thing going.
So, Lynn, tell us how you sprung into action and saved the day.
Well, so basically what we did was the three of us talked with counsel from Ardis and Kirk and decided we would go ahead and reach out to our members from the western part of the state to see what they needed. And, it was slow at first because people didn't have power or phones. But eventually we had calls coming in saying, can you go check in this particular area? We haven't heard from our friends in days, that type of thing. So we activated all the Western regional chairs, and they were our resource. If someone, like I know that Cliff had sent somebody up from his district down to this particular area to check on a person that needed to be checked on, we were able to circle back with that person and let them know that they were fine. And then we had a lady from Jamie's district who had some damage, and I think she was lonely. I think that she just didn't know what to do with the damage that she had and appreciated the visit and the time that y'all spent with her.
So I wanted to get into that a little bit. Like, were there any stories that were just really touching for you guys?
Lynn just mentioned that we contacted all the district chairs. We started a text tree with all the district chairs. However, there was one district chair, District 5, Willie Job, that we could not contact, and we did not hear from him for probably close to 3 weeks.
Wow.
It was close to 3 weeks. We didn't know if he's okay, and we finally sent somebody up there to check on him, and he finally texted me. After about 3 weeks that he was okay, but they had no communications. Their bridge was washed out. They couldn't even get out.
We've heard from, not on the podcast, but at our board meeting, Mr. Job did kind of tell us everything that happened with it's pretty heartbreaking what has happened around his neighborhood. He said personally he didn't have a lot of house damage, but a lot of farm damage and things, but he saw some things that were pretty terrible.
The river through his property was totally rerouted.
Yeah.
Totally.
And he lost friends.
He lost some good friends, and the example he gave was the elderly couple. The gentleman survived, the lady did not, and the gentleman, when they found her in the debris flow, he would not leave the site until they got her out. So
did y'all hear a lot of stories like that?
we did. The only state employee that we are aware of that lost their life was Lola Ramsewer from Black Mountain Center. She
Oh.
was a fairly new housekeeper there at Black Mountain Center, and that's the only state employee that we confirmed that did not survive the flood. Her and her husband, they both lived in the Swannanoa area near the center there. She
Wow.
was fairly new employee, but they did not survive.
Okay.
I think, and I don't know if you want to talk about this now or in a little bit, but I think the state employees that had to work during this time when they had devastation at their homes, I think that it's just a testament to our state employees, especially, in the western part of the state. And I know we had people come from all over, but it just felt like they were taking care of their own. Very proud people out west. When we were trying to help, SEANC's board, we came together and got a disaster relief to help facilitate some of this. And when we would call and say, do you need A, B, C, or D, especially in certain areas, it was like, no, we've got this, we've got it handled. But then I think after a while with the hygiene bags and that type of thing, they took because they needed to, they had to. And I think also the department heads with DOT, DHHS, DAC during that time were amazing leaders. Ardis and I had spoken with all of them, DPS, of course, as well. And they all were so concerned about their state employees from that area, the things that they saw that they had to witness and the devastation and the cleanup. It was nice and that's not a strong enough word, that they cared about the mental health of their employees.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of those state employees, some of them still had to go do their duty and got pulled away. They lost their homes. They lost everything.
Yeah.
So, that's the state employees still doing their service to the state of North Carolina.
We had a past president that lost his home. And when we contacted him from Scenic Cares, he said, help those that need it more to the stage where I don't need as much help. But he put off help for himself to help others.
Yeah. So let's talk about that help. We were able to get a lot of support from members all over the state, lots of donations and things, and we took it up there to some sites. Tell me a little bit about what all we collected and what we did with it.
So we put the word out to our district chairs, district members across the state, churches. Scenic ended up on a list of where it was safe to bring donations. So we had a lot of folks there. Brad Longhans coordinated it in Raleigh and worked with Cliff, Jamie, and Adam.
We should give Adam a shout out. Adam
Weinbarger.
He's our representative in the West.
He was a huge asset. When we couldn't get stuff up there all the way in, we would use him to pick it up halfway, take it to Jamie's house, leave it there, meet Cliff. And then we took a pod up there. Well, we got a pod, and then we took a Penske truck up there. Brad and Adam and Cliff and Jamie were there, and I'll let them speak about that. But I did want to mention that we partnered with Aetna, and they were there at the relief effort, and they gave out hygiene bags, T-shirts, and that type of thing. So they were a huge supporter of helping our disaster relief effort.
Yeah, District 1 and District 2 did over 400 hygiene bags that were distributed to DOT Division 13 and 14. And the first place that received those hygiene bags was the Mitchell County Department of Transportation. So Mitchell County was actually the first agency that was touched by Scenic Cares. Actually, the second day of this disaster, Adam, we had no money.
Yeah.
The ATMs weren't working. The banks weren't open. None of the places were accepting credit cards because the machines were down. So we needed some supplies the very first thing. And I picked up the phone, called Adam Weinbarger. Adam went to several locations in the Hickory area, the Taylorsville area, picked up goodies and some water and things and brought them. And my District 2 members from probation parole stood in the parking deck in Buncombe County and put together goodie bags and hygiene bags to get started. That was like the second or third day after this disaster.
Yeah, let's talk about the variety of items, because I know that Brad sorted lots of bars of soap. I saw some heaters out there. Margaret brought a bunch of
blankets. We had coats, water. We had an abundance of water because that's what everybody needed initially, in the beginning. And then it transitioned to clean up stuff, shovels, and then they needed trash bags and that type of thing. So we went through a lot and prioritized what needed to go when and that type of thing. Our board did give us some money. So we were able to buy. Cliff found out that they needed chapstick because when they were cleaning the roads with all the dust and debris, et cetera, their lips were getting dried out, and that they also needed hats.
Yeah, I think we all learned a lesson in what is needed during relief efforts, because I know we updated that flyer several times. School supplies was on there, right?
Things we take for granted.
Yeah, things you take for granted. So,
as far as distribution centers, we actually have two. And I'd like to give a shout out to a young lady named Anika Harper, who's a training coordinator at Black Mountain Neurological Medical Center there in Black Mountain. Jamie and I went by there when we were doing our recon, and we talked to the deputy director, Courtney Shetley, and she agreed to let Anika Harper do whatever we needed to through Scenic Cares. So we set up a distribution center, like a store there. Yeah. We showed the video at the Board of Governors, and she set it up like a store and had different rooms with different items, like clothing in one room, dry goods in another room, cleaning supplies in another room. And that distribution center is still functioning to this day because there's still a lot of need. There were 104 confirmed deaths, and there were over 125,000 structures and homes damaged or destroyed in western North Carolina during this storm. The other location, we went to Avery Mitchell, serviced Yancey County, Avery County, Mitchell County, and that general area, the Boone, Watauga area. We went up there for that distribution center. First VP, Wendell Powell, came up and helped us. District 3, with Janice Smith as the chair, they took an active role in that one and came out and helped and provided a lot of goods there. But we did the 2-day. That's when Brad brought the Penske truck up there. Yeah. It was bitterly cold and raining. The warden there, Mike Slagle, the captain, loaned us his outdoor patio heater and 2 of his propane tanks to keep us a little bit warm and dry. But they let us also use their carport structure to set up under, because that first day it was absolutely pouring the rain.
Well, that's where I wanted to kind of end. So where are we at now? What's going on up there now? I know folks are still living in tents from what we can tell, right?
Some are still living in tents. The temporary structures that they're building, some of them have some heat. But I'd like to give a big shout out to all the districts that have taken an active role. Anika Harper wanted to specifically thank a couple of the last ones. We've stopped taking goods at the office. We've asked everybody that still wants to donate, if they will, go to Amazon and order it and have it shipped directly to the center there. And we can get Anika Harper's information if you want to give it out. We can put that in there. They can contact Anika. And if they don't want to do work there, there's another. Valley Strong is a fairly new 501c organization that just got their certification, and they are begging for volunteers in the Swannanoa area, which was, as Jamie can tell you, when we drove through there, it was just heartbreaking and devastating.
Yeah. So it's going to forever change that whole area, from what I understand. Any final thoughts?
Yes, John, I'd like to mention Tim Southern, his wife, Ann, out of District 4. The West is broke down with 9 districts in it, and all the district chairs, when we finally got to talking to one another and texting each other, they all stood up and took care of all their own, like Lynn just spoke. But they done a good job in that area, reconning themselves in that area. But the work that has been done up there, and there's plenty more to do, but Scenic Cares, and I can't get off of here without saying a big shout out to all the districts from across the east back to the mountains. Everything you sent to the district and up in the western part, it's been amazing. It's helped a lot of people.
Awesome. Well, we're very appreciative of the work you've done, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so that was a cool interview with Cliff and Jamie. They're cool people, and
such good people.
They work hard for our members, and we're very proud of what we've done so far out there, and we'll continue to work for the folks in the West. Stay safe with the fires as well. We're going to do something different today for my wacky weird question of the week.
John's wacky weird question of the week.
The only person in the room that's done something amazing in the last 2 weeks.
In the last forever.
In the last year and a half or 2 years. Sam Cline. Sam, here's my question. Mm-hmm. Where did you go for the last 2 weeks or a week and a half?
I was there for a full week. I went to Oahu, Hawaii.
Cool.
Yeah.
Tell us the circumstances of how you get to Hawaii.
Yes, please tell us.
How do you get,
For me, it was my dad had a work trip, and he goes on a lot of different work trips. He's been to San Diego. We just figured out he's going to Key West in March. Unfortunately, I just spent all my money in Hawaii, so now I'm not going to Key West. But he goes on a lot of work trips and will spend 2 to 3 weeks in different places training military personnel in physical and technical surveillance.
Wow. Can you say that on the air? I don't know.
Yeah.
Is it classified or anything?
No. No. But
he looks it.
He does.
I heard you got to meet him.
We
right?
did.
Yeah, they came by the office the other day, her mom and dad.
Okay.
And he looks like he'd be, Top Gun.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
I didn't get to meet him, but so how was it? Was it cool?
was amazing. I truly just can say that it's a once-in-a-lifetime experience. I had so much fun. We went to the Pearl Harbor Memorial. We did some 5 a.m. sunrise hikes. We did.
We didn't like 5 a.m. or hike. Sunrise is neat.
Oh, it was beautiful. We hiked to the top of the Makapua Lighthouse and got to watch the sunrise there, which just meant that we had to be awake at 5:30 in the morning to get there by 7:15.
But a lifetime of memories out of that.
Oh, yeah. Also, we did it like the day after I got there. So the time difference hadn't hit me yet. So even though it was 5 a.m. there, it felt like I was waking up at 10 a.m. here.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
So you left on a Friday, right? I think it was.
I left
Saturday
at like 4 o'clock in the morning.
So that's, I guess, later that day, I get an alert on my phone that's like, volcano exploding in Hawaii. And I was like, oh, here we go. We're going to have to hear about this from Sam's going to be in the volcano. So did you see it? Did you fly over it or anything? Or
I couldn't see anything when we were flying there because it was dark.
Okay.
It was around 3 a.m. here when I got there. It was like 8 p.m. in Hawaii when I got there, but 3 a.m. in North Carolina. So we couldn't really see anything, which we also flew home in the dark. So I didn't get to just like look over and see the pretty islands as we were flying out.
See, here's my concept of Hawaii is the 5 little islands on the map. And you just think that probably you can just hop from one island to the next. I guess that's probably not the case, right?
No. So the cheapest one to fly into is Oahu.
Okay.
From what my research was, it's the cheapest one to fly into. But once you are there, they are much cheaper to fly from island to island. But you do have to fly if you wanted to go to Maui or the Big Island or
Are
the
there
other
bridges
islands.
from either island?
No.
Oh, okay.
My brother had that misconception too. My brother was like, well, yeah, everyone just drives between the islands. And I'm like, there's not a bridge connecting the islands.
There's that old saying, I don't know. But it's like, why are there interstate highways in Hawaii? Right? Because they can't connect to any other state, right?
They're still horrendous. The traffic there is hard. It's difficult. We went to the North Shore because my dad wanted to show me the waves. This time of year, the waves are humongous in the North Shore. They're amazing for surfers. And so he wanted to,
Oh, cool.
He wanted to take me up there and show me that. And so whenever we went up there, it was a 30-minute drive to get up there.
Mm-hmm.
We left at like 5 p.m. because my dad had gotten off early that day. We left the North Shore at like 5 p.m. It took us an hour and 30 minutes to get back to our hotel.
Wow.
Sounds like my commute
how
home.
horrific traffic
Sounds
is.
like going down 440.
From here to Garner.
Yeah.
So,
but typically it only takes an hour to get from one end of the island to the other end of the island with no traffic. But there's always traffic because so many people live there, but it's such a small island.
So I just got a couple more questions and we'll wrap up. I won't put you on the spot too much. Now, first off, what was your favorite food you ate?
One of my favorite foods was Spam musubi.
Yeah, Spam is big right there,
Spam
right?
is huge. You get Spam and eggs for breakfast, like with rice. Spam musubi is massive. I make Spam musubi at home myself because I love it so much.
Nice.
What is Spam musubi?
Spam musubi is basically Spam sushi. And there's so many different ways you can do it. It's just a little brick of rice.
You can tell
almost.
this generation didn't
I
get
swear to
force-fed
God.
Spam as children.
Yeah, my grandma.
It wasn't a force feeding for me. My parents introduced it to me and I loved it.
No Spam and craft singles for Sam.
Deviled ham. Remember deviled ham?
Ugh.
I love that too.
I like that.
And then we took veiny weenies out in the boat.
But you would sear the Spam in a pan and then make a teriyaki sauce that goes over it. It goes on top of this little brick of sushi rice, and then they wrap it in seaweed. But some people add eggs. You can add other things to Spam musubi, avocado, eggs.
I mean, I would eat that.
Whatever
That
it
sounds
is.
pretty
I'd
lick.
eat it.
It's pretty
This is
yummy.
a new cooking segment of our show.
So
That
I
would be
bet there's a
fun.
reason that because spam is like easily imported or something.
Yes,
Okay.
but also because pork is so huge out there.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Mm,
Pork
sure.
is a very big thing in Hawaii. You just see pigs running along the side of the highway. You see chickens and roosters everywhere.
Did you go to a
Well,
luau?
I did. I went to a luau the first night that I was
Nice.
there. They had fire dancing. They had haka dancing. They really embraced the whole culture there. You see more than just the Hawaiian Islands. You see all of the French Polynesian culture. And it's so cool. They had people doing dances that are traditionally Samoan. They had them doing traditional dances from other islands. And we kind of got to hear the different languages because there's a different way to say hello on each of these islands for the most part, besides
very
just aloha.
That's very cool.
I think of like 50 First Dates and Forgetting Sarah Marshall when I think of Hawaii. So,
Grass skirts.
2 movies. Well, it sounds like you had a good time and you're excited to be back at Scenic, ready to
Woo.
work for state employees and retirees, correct?
Yes.
Still recovering from jet lag, though.
Well, thanks for joining us this week and hope you enjoyed our little podcast here. And please go on to the podcast app or YouTube that you use to listen to us and rate us. Please give us 5 stars. We would love to have that.
We have 3 5-star reviews right now.
Nice.
Check
And,
us out.
Please subscribe to our YouTube channel as well, youtube.com/scenic media. Subscribe, and then anything we do, you'll get an update of when it's been posted. So thank you for joining us and have a good week.